What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Foambirds RC. I'm Hugh, and today we're going to be making one of these, a hot wire cutter. So stay tuned. Alrighty, y'all, let's get started. Quick overview of just kind of some of the things that you're going to need. I've got 4 pieces of balsa here. I'm going to use balsa because that's just kind of what I've got on hand. You can use PVC. PVC will probably work better. But I am going to wrap this balsa where the wire meets. I'm going to wrap it in some electrical tape just to keep it from burning. Let's see. These pieces are 18 inches. Got 2 of them. I'm going to laminate them together for a really thick handle so that it'll just feel really comfortable in my hands. These are 12-inch pieces, so really the whole thing is going to look a lot like that. A little bit bigger than I need for the projects that I'm working on right now, but if I do bigger projects later, this will come in pretty handy. So yeah, super excited about this. Let's see. This is a guitar string, actually. If any of you guys are musicians out there, guitar strings will work very well as the hot wire. If you're not a musician, if you don't have any guitar strings on hand, buy some actual hot wire because it'll probably work a little bit better on this. But I had, this is an E string from like an acoustic guitar string package, just kind of my extra string box I took this out of, and I think it should work really, really well. So, yep. Apart from that, just some little things. I'm going to be using this as my power supply. I'll probably solder some more wire on the end of it, but we will have to see. This is the ground, this is the positive, and then I will put this into the power. These are some little crimps. I'm going to crimp those using this, which is a crimping tool. I think this one's from Balsa USA. You can use whatever. I just have this crimping tool in hand because I was doing some World War I balsa stuff, and I picked this up. But it should work really well for securing the string down and providing an attachment point for the soldered leads. Apart from that, you guys just should need some basic tools like sandpaper, knife, some glue. Yeah, so let's get started. Alrighty, everybody, so we've got the balsa laid out here. I think I'm going to do a triangular joint, so have it split like that just for strength and also so that I can wrap some tape around there and just make it super strong. This balsa is really strong. The grain is running this way, so it's not going to bend at all, which is really nice. I just picked this up from my scrap balsa bin. Again, this was what I had on hand. You can probably use PVC pipe. If you do, there are a lot of other videos out there of guys that do. I just figured I'd try something, I don't know, a little bit new. So let's put this off to the side. First step is we're going to laminate these 2 pieces together. I've got just some slow, thick CA and some kicker. And I'm just going to laminate these 2 pieces together. Thin bead of glue, you don't need that much. And then on the other side, just spray some kicker. Be generous with the kicker. It helps a lot. And then as I'm putting this down, I'll kind of wiggle it, get it right into the position that I want. And this cures very fast. So be sure to put it down right where you want it to be. And that looks pretty good. That in there needs to cure. Go. And now we've got 1 piece of balsa here. So what I'm going to go and do now is I'm going to sand the middle of this. Since this is where I'm going to be gripping, I don't want there to be those little edges. So I'm just going to kind of round out the middle, make a nice little handle here so that I can use this with a little bit more comfort. I'll do that off camera because it'll take a little while. So I'll report back to you after that. All right, everything is sanded up. All the parts here. This probably took maybe 15-20 minutes. I did really smooth sanding job. Just used, I think, 100 grit sandpaper. Took a lot of material off, which is good. So now this feels really comfortable in my hand. I also sanded these edges because probably a lot of it, the shaping that I'm going to be doing will be like this. So yeah, now it is time to glue these things together. So I think what I'm going to do here is I'm going to glue them with like a triangular joint. You can see I've already sketched it out on this one right here. Just made like a nice little triangular joint, and I'll cut all the way through. That way they'll bond really well, the edge will be strong, and I'll also be able to take it and wrap it with some tape, just for that extra little bit of rigidity. So let's go ahead and do that now. We'll put this one off to the side. And I'm going to take my X-Acto blade, or my razor blade. The razor blade will work really well for this. I'm just going to go ahead and cut this first piece of foam. Balsa, excuse me. Alrighty there, the first little bit of balsa is cut, and let's cut this to match. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to draw, I'm going to lay this at the angle that I want. I'm actually going to give it a little bit of a bowed angle, okay? So this is not going to be at 90 degrees. I want it a little bit out. Reason for that being so that it will always have that string under tension. So that I can pull it back in to tie the string, and then it'll have that little bit of bow out in it so that it can hold that string under tension. Because we don't really want any slack in it. That's one of the more important things about a hot wire, is you really don't want a lot of slack in your line. I will go slowly cutting it anyway, so it won't really matter that much, but it is sort of an important thing. So got the angle that I wanted, and I just simply drew a line here, and now I've got a nice line that I can cut out with a razor blade. So I'll go ahead and do that. Alright, it's cut. I'm just going to give it a nice little dust with the razor block, just so that it will be a little bit smoother. And now let's test fit these two pieces. Yes. Perfect. So as you guys can see, we've got a good little bit of bow in there. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same for the other side. Okay, so I got the other side already. Did exactly the same thing that I did on this side over here, I did on this side. So it is time to glue it together. I'm just going to use some thick CA. You can use whatever. And then I'll use some kicker as well, just so that I can speed up the process a little bit and don't have to wait around for this thing to dry. So just a very thin bead on one side, and then I'll squirt some kicker on this side and bond them together. Make sure all the angles are at where you want, because this stuff cures very, very fast. And look at that, it's already done. Do the same thing on the other side here again. There we go. So I got, again, just a very thin bead. You don't need a lot of glue. The less glue there is, as long as there's some glue, the stronger that joint is going to be. Only use as much glue as you need, and no more. There we go. Put that here as well. Boom. All cured up. Alright, so here's what we're going to do now, is I'm going to move over to this side, and I'm going to reinforce this with tape. I think what I'll use for this is some very, very, very thin strips of this tape right here. This is just nylon reinforced packaging tape. I use this a lot for my builds. It's very, very strong, a lot stronger than regular old packing tape. And it's just, yeah, it will hold up to a lot. So I'm just gonna tear off as much as I think I need, and then I'll actually cut this in half because I don't need this thick of tape. So I'll cut it in half right down the middle so that I can use it for both. Go ahead and do that now. And now, put this strip tape to the side. I'm just going to apply this tape to this and wrap it around. Keep it really tight. Since this joint is just for strength purposes, keeping it really tight. And then I'll just cut just a little bit of relief right over onto there so that it'll fold over real nice. Onto that piece. Alright, so now you can see we've got a really nice joint. This is super strong. It also, though, has some flex, which is going to be good because it'll be able to bend in and it will hold up to the hot wire. So I'm going to go ahead and do exactly the same thing again on the other side, and then we'll report back to you guys. Alrighty, we are done. Did the other side exactly the same. I did actually go back and end up adding a second layer of tape. I figured, what the heck, like, you can really never have too much tape on this thing, and if I want it to last for a long time, which I do, I think just adding that little extra bit of strength is pretty important. But yeah, so now the frame is done. This thing looks really good, is very sturdy, very strong. And let's get on to the actual hot wire itself. So the hot wire that I'm using is a guitar string. For you musicians out there, I just took this out of, like I said before in the instruction video, I just took this out of like my spare strings package. I think this is an E string from an acoustic guitar, although I can't entirely be sure. It's not thin enough that I'm worried about breaking it, but it's also thin enough that I think it will make some really, really, really clean cuts. So I've got to decide kind of where I want this thing, and preferably I would like it right about near the end, right about there. So I'm just going to go ahead and mark that place off with a pencil. I'll give it a little bit of a gentle back and forth sawing motion just to establish a little line. And then I'll just mark that line up with a pencil. Okay, so now I got basically where I want it to be. So I wanted a little bit of meat of the balsa under it, just so that it doesn't slip off or anything. But then I also wanted it near the end so that I could get those really accurate cuts. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna go and make a pretty thin, like, score almost. Just kind of cut a crevice in the balsa where I want this string to be so that it can seat properly. So I will go ahead and do that right now. I think I'm going to use the back end of my X-Acto knife just to get that nice score. So I'm just running the back end of the X-Acto knife over it a few times. Flip it up now. Sorry if you, there we go. And then just make sure that there's like a nice little crevice in there. Since that string is thin, it doesn't need to be a huge crevice, but I am also going to go over it with a little bit of electrical tape. So it has to be a big enough crevice that the electrical tape and the hot wire can seat in there. So alright, I'll bring this up really close to the camera here. So if you guys can see that, it's got a nice little crevice running along the whole thing here, and I will go ahead and do the same thing on the other side before we move on to applying the electrical tape. Alrighty, you guys, so both ends are done. Like I showed, just made a very faint crevice in the other one, exactly the same as I did on the first one. The next step that I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of electrical tape around where the wire will be. This is more honestly just like a safety precaution for me more than anything. It doesn't need it for strength, but if that wire gets hot, I'm not entirely sure what it'll do to the balsa, and I don't want it burning through that balsa because I put all this hard work into a frame. So I'm just going to apply some electrical tape, and I'm going to run my finger along where that crevice is while I'm applying it. That will actually seat the electrical tape into the crevice so that I don't lose where that is. Apply it on this side. Flip the camera around a little bit here so you guys can see that better. Apply it on this side. Keep running my finger along that crevice. Wrap it around the bottom. Again, flip it over so you guys can see a little bit better. So see what I'm doing here is I'm just running my finger into that crevice just so that I can get that wire seated up when I do eventually put it on. There we go. It is done. Go ahead and take off the end here. The knife. Alright. And there we go. I will bring this again close to the camera so that you guys can see. So basically, as you can see, we've got that crevice ingrained in there really nicely so that when I go back to put the string in, the guitar string, I will have it be able to seat in there. Basically just click in there, and that way it won't want to slide off of the back. So that looks really good. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing on the other side, and then we'll be on to applying the hot wire. So now that that is done, it is time to put on the hot wire. So I'm going to go ahead and start just by test fitting this. So what you're looking for is you want to make sure that that crevice that you made is deep enough that the wire will seat in there really nicely. You're looking for something that will not pull out even under some pretty immense pressure, like what this is going to be going through. Yes, so that looks really good. If your crevice does not look great, I would definitely recommend peeling off the electrical tape and just digging out that a little bit more just to get that really nice deep seat. Don't dig it out too much or else the balsa might snap. It's a very small likelihood, but again, this is something that should be strong, should last you a long time. And if you have too deep of little notches, then it will be a little bit less durable than you would want. So, but my test fit looks really good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slip one of these over it. So this is a copper sleeve. It's a Nichrome press little tube here. Basically, I'll hold this up to the camera so you guys can see it. So the way that it works is it's got two little things, one for the wire in, one for the wire out, and you take the Nichrome press plier things, or pliers or whatever, and you're going to press down right in the middle so that the pieces get flattened, so that the piece of copper gets flattened onto the string and it holds it really securely. The reason I'm doing this is it would be very hard for me to solder a a lead, an electrical lead to this. It's just not wide enough. But this will give me something to solder it to, and it will hold the wire in place. So I highly recommend getting a couple of these. They're very cheap, and you can just use pliers to put them in. So I'm gonna go ahead and slip this in over here, and I'm gonna bring it out till about halfway, because I want it out of the way while I start making this. So the key here is you want it to be very tight. No slack on this wire, right? So since the wire is going to heat up and cause slack, a little bit of slack, you definitely want to avoid any added slack by caused by just a not great job of putting this wire on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and, once this is seated into there, I'm going to go ahead and pull the two ends of this wire. Get a really nice deep seat in there. And in doing this, I'm bending the wire so that it actually kind of wants to keep that shape, which will make it a lot easier for me to put it in. Just make sure there's no slack by popping it against the table here. That looks really good. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my knife compress tool, and once I'm satisfied with that, I'm just going to press this down as hard as I can. There we go. There we go. Press it down just a little bit more here. Get that nice and flat. But those wires don't wiggle around at all. That's looking really good. So as you guys can see, this wire is seated in there very nicely, and now it is ready to go. I am just flattening this out quite a bit, more than I would normally do on any other reel application, just so that I can have that extra durability and strength. Make sure that that wire is seated in there very, very nicely. Alright, so that looks good. As you can see, there is really no wiggle in that. That is very tight. There's not a lot of slack, so it's going to be a very good hot wire, hopefully. I'm going to go ahead and use the ends of these things, or you can use the ends of pliers. I'm just going to go ahead and snip off that extra bit of guitar string, because I don't want that to cut my fingers. That would be bad. The goal here is something that you can use, not something that hurts you every time you try to. So, once that is, just getting out my needle and my wire cutters here. Perfect. Alright. So once that is done, we're going to go ahead and do exactly the same thing on the other side. The only thing to do on the other side that would be slightly different is give it a little bit of a pull before you make the Nyko press, before you make the joint with the little copper thingy here. Just so that you'll have a little bit less slack on that line. Pull the two pieces of balsa together so that they're always kind of wanting to go out, and they'll keep that line on quite a bit of slack. So I'll go ahead and do that. I'll do it off camera because it's not going to be much different from doing the first one. And I will report back to you once that is complete. Alrighty, as you guys can see, the hot wire is on and it is looking great. One thing that I have done is I had kind of a brainwave. So there's a little bit more slack on my line than I wanted. It's not terrible by any stretch of imagination, but it was still like, I wanted just a little bit less. So what I've ended up doing is I cut a piece of balsa. So I laid the balsa down and cut it so that it was just a little bit farther than the edge of this. And then when I slide this into place, it actually acts as a tensioner. So it forces those pieces of balsa here on each end apart so that the string is under tension the whole time. And now you can see that tension is very, very small. So I like to go to the place where I feel like the tension is the least on the string. I would say for this one, it's about here, maybe a little bit farther. There we go. So now there is very, very little tension, very, very little slack on that string, excuse me. And when it heats up, there will probably be a little bit more, but honestly, I'm very satisfied with that. So let's go ahead and glue this into place, and then I'll report back to you guys, and we'll start soldering some leads. All right, so it is time to start soldering. I'm going to run this positive lead all the way around. I'll probably have to lengthen it up a little bit, but basically run it all the way around and solder it to this copper right here. Then the negative lead is going to go onto this copper right here, and hopefully we will have power. I'm not going to solder on camera because I'm going to have to wear a respirator mask and I can't talk through that, but soldering is super simple once you get the hang of it, so I'm sure you guys won't have any problems. So I will solder this, and then I'll be back to report the results. Alrighty everybody, so we've got everything all soldered up. Soldering job went really well, super quick, super easy. Shouldn't have any trouble with that because you guys have probably done soldering for a lot longer than I have. If you have never soldered before, then just watch a YouTube video. There's really nothing that's super hard about it. It's just kind of a thing that you gotta learn, gotta do a little bit of practice with. So I soldered the positive lead onto this side, negative lead onto this side, ran the positive across the brace beam and down the side. So it has a really nice clean look now, all the wires are hidden, and just that little bit of extra protection for the wires since these aren't the thickest wires in the world. You don't want them to be beat up. I have it running from there into a little servo extension, which is running into this, which is my servo tester. And the servo tester is plugged into a 3000 milliamp 2-cell battery. So I've got a little piece of scrap foam here, and I'll try to show you guys what this thing can do. Just a little cut here. So as you can see, it goes through very cleanly. And I'm not even really applying much upward pressure to this piece, but it's going through, cutting very, very clean. The hot wire cuts by itself, so you really don't need to apply any upward pressure to it to get that nice clean cut. And there we go. I mean, check that out. That is a beautiful cut. A lot better than I could have gotten with one of these, a knife, or a razor blade, or whatever. So super excited to use this hot wire in some of my future projects, and I hope that you guys found this helpful. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that you found this helpful. I hope that you can build one of these and you can go out and use it and have a lot of fun, do some really cool things with it. Me personally, I'm definitely going to be using this to make the plug for the Mustang cockpit, which I'll be making out of pink foam. And then later on, I'll probably do some projects that are pretty much entirely pink foam. So I'm super excited to have this tool and be able to use it. Apart from that, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you at the field.